Hello. Hello. Good evening. Surprise. Hello. Oh, my own stream coming through. Hello. There we go. I've muted my own stream. Hello, 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 hello. And Bobby is here. I'm just getting my stream up on my laptop so that I can see what's going on if I need to share screens and that kind of stuff. So all is good. Hey, Chris. How you doing? Don't know how many people we're going to get in here tonight because this is totally unplanned. Nobody was thinking of this at all. In fact, I was planning other things to be doing, but Jonny contacted me and said, "Hey, I've had a Windows update go completely pear-shaped, and he can't do his show, so I'm doing it instead." So there we go. That's the story, folks. And Jonny did post that as well over in the group. He posted. I put up a little video explaining what was going on, and he posted a response telling you what was going on. So he actually saved me some time because I was gonna actually start off the show by explaining what's going down. So yeah. Yeah, Jonny's not very happy about his machine. And the latest Windows update, you gotta love Windows 10. I have heard nothing but bad things about Windows 10. So Microsoft, if any of you at Microsoft are watching, erg to you. So many of my friends that are on Windows 10, they do a Windows 10 update and it completely destroys their settings for doing broadcasts and for making videos and all sorts. It's just very bad. And it can take hours to put right, and hours cost money, especially if you are making videos for a living, like I am, like Johnny Guy does. You know, we make videos for a living. That's what we do. That's our jobs. Well, for me, it's part of my job. It's not the sum total of my job, but it's certainly a big part of it. And so there you go. So hopefully, yes, Bob T. Hopefully, Jonny can get things up and running soon, and hopefully we'll be back to normal. But there's no telling how long that's going to take. So I might be doing tonight, and I might be doing tomorrow, which would be Songwriting Simplified anyway. So it's entirely possible that Songwriting Simplified might well be a solo show again. I've done a couple of those, so I'm kind of getting the hang of how to do those. So yeah, so this is totally unplanned. I know Jonny had a particular subject that he was going to cover tonight, and you know what, I'm going to actually let him carry on with that. So maybe Thursday, if he is up and running on Thursday, maybe he can pick up with that. Andy Arthur's saying that's why I go Mac. Yeah, a lot of people make that argument that, hey, go Mac and you don't get any of that. Well, you know what, I've heard almost as many bad things about High Sierra and Sierra as I have about Windows 10. So I think it's a case of swings on roundabouts and things like that. I think it's a case of Windows 10 and High Sierra, Mac OS X are probably bedfellows. They probably got a lot of the same code. It would not surprise me if the same people have written exactly the same software and just designed it very annoyingly badly. So anyway, I'm going to get off my high horse about things like OSs and stuff. I'm using Windows 7. Windows 7 has been pretty much trouble-free for me. Certainly on the machine that I'm using now, it is totally trouble-free. The machine I had before this, it was nothing but trouble. But that was not the OS, that was the machine. So in this case, on this machine, Windows 7 works wonderfully. And Andy Arthur says, yeah, I'm not in High Sierra. Yeah, and for the same reason that you've just argued why you went Mac, because of Windows flaking out and that kind of thing, you've avoided going High Sierra, probably for the same reason. Yeah, and that would make sense. whoever designs OSs needs to have their head examined. They should really not put out an update to an OS until it is solid, dependable, and reliable, because the OS operates the system. It is the operating system. You cannot run your computer without it. So it's pretty fundamental. So anyway, lecture on OS and stuff like that over. So yeah, total unplanned evening this evening. So essentially, folks, this is down to you guys. I'm going to need a lot of your help to kind of steer where we're going to go tonight and what we're going to talk about and what we're going to demonstrate, what we're going to do. Hopefully, when I'm in my new home in July, I will have much faster broadband, which means I will be able to do much higher quality live streams than what we've got right now. I'm looking at it on my laptop over there, and I can see that it is, freezing, breaking up, and all that kind of stuff. And audio quality is not that great. So, hopefully, new place, new audio, new ability to do broadcasts and that kind of stuff. So, Andy Arthur is suggesting that I discuss the new plugins on the Fat channel. Certainly can do that. Absolutely. I did do an overview video. I don't know how many of you have seen my little overview video, which doesn't really go into a great deal of detail. It just basically shows you what you can get, what options are available to you. So why don't I... can I talk about the new Fat Channel freebie? Can't seem to get it to work on my computer, says Bob Powell. I'm going to try and those are the ones I want to cover. Unless you also want me to extend and go into the other ones, we can. But let me just minimize everything. Let me just see how much CPU I'm going to have in the course of doing this. And I'm going to get Studio One open. And I know that none of you can see my screen at the moment, so don't yell at me for saying we can't see it, because I have not shared my screen yet, okay? And I'm going to in a minute. Once I've got something up and running, let me just see if I can find something we can use. Okay, we'll use this. And we just wait for it to load up. And then I'm going to share my screen in just a second, folks. Alrighty, so let's go over to this. Let's go and not stop the broadcast, which is what I very nearly clicked on. And let's go and share the entire screen. And we'll minimize that. And now you should be able to see Studio One, which I can't really tell from the laptop at the moment because my laptop is just frozen. Okay, Chris says, I saw your Fat Channel overview. I would like to hear which compressors you prefer for different functions. That's a good question. So let's just, for those of you that haven't seen it, let me just open it up because I've got it on this channel over here. So compressors. And as you can see, when you have all of them, you have quite an extensive list of EQs and compressors that you can use, but we'll just start with the ones that which you get, which are the VT1 comp and the RC500 comp. So we'll start with the RC500. Hopefully you guys are seeing this relatively clearly. Bob says on screen. Yep, good. Okay, we should be, and I'm watching the stream over there, and you should be able to see it. I think one of the biggest things that slows down my bandwidth, by the way, when I'm streaming like this, is my camera. I think my camera really slows everything down. So hopefully Studio One is nice and clear. So the RC500, this is a very cool compressor. Now I have used this on vocals. I have used this on acoustic guitar as well. It is pretty good. It can be a little bit on the aggressive side. In fact, both of them can. The VT1 and the RC500 can be a little bit fast and a little bit very, fairly grabby, as they say. So you have to be pretty gentle with these guys if you're going to use it on something like a vocal or something like, let's say you're recording a guitar vocal type thing. You gotta be so careful and so gentle with these, because you can end up fairly easily over processing. Even if your VU meter is only looking at like 2 or 3 dB of gain reduction, it can still sound like it's really grabbing hard, because it's just the particular sound that these two in particular will give you. So you have to think about how much of that you actually want and how much of it you don't want. Now, the attack and release are variable. As you can see, you can swing it all the way around fast. You got fast on the left, slow on the right, fast on the left, slow on the right, which is actually pretty much identical to the actual RC500. What I'm going to do just now is I'm actually going to compare this to the Channel Strip Collection RC500. So let's get that in. Let's close this guy out. And we'll go on a fishing trip for the RC500. Here it is. And we'll bring that in underneath. And we'll park that over there. And we'll pin that. And we'll go get the Fat Channel RC500. And we'll park this adjacent to it. So as you can see, the compressor is very simple. What you do get on the Fat Channel XT is you get this makeup knob, which in the compressor section over here you don't get, which is very interesting. There is no makeup gain on this, but there's a master for your preamp, and there's a gain knob over here on the preamp as well. So I think it's pretty cool that they actually added this makeup gain knob on for you. So if I was just to isolate if I bypass this guy, and if we just solo the soprano sax and we find a nice section where the soprano sax is playing. Now, I would suggest that maybe the RC500 is not necessarily, I would suggest that maybe not necessarily the RC500 is a good choice for something like a soprano sax. Okay, hang on. Somebody's just posted something in the chat. I want to check. And that's my good friend Rainer at Y64 Studio, who says, good morning, all, and hi, Jonny Lipsham Studios. Only short hello and update. Vera is safe in the hospital now. Tomorrow we'll see what's wrong. Good night, all, and thanks for the support. Rainer, all of us here at Home Studio Trainer wish you and Vera all the very best. Our thoughts and our prayers are with you guys, and we hope that you are able to, with the medical staff at the hospital, ascertain exactly what's going on. And we hope and we pray that Vera makes a full recovery and that you guys are able to get home and get some time together to rest and recuperate. Okay? And we totally understand if we don't see you around quite so much. But yeah, just keep us up to date with what's going on. And we look forward to hearing that you guys are out of the hospital. So thanks for dropping by and letting us know. I appreciate your thought in doing that at this particular time. Stephen Greenwood is here. He says, sorry I'm late, tracking a vocalist at the moment. Stephen, get to work, my friend. Tracking that vocalist is the most important thing you can be doing right now. But thank you for stopping by. Really appreciate it. So we've got, 19, nearly 20 people here. Okay, so let's compare these guys. So we're gonna bypass the compressor here, and we're gonna try and set the same settings here. So let's get this this compressor on a slow-ish attack and a medium release, and we'll get the threshold. I mean, these are kind of like the settings it's just popped in at default. This is probably not going to be correct. But we're going to adjust. All right, so let's take a listen to our soprano sax on its own, and see what these default settings actually do. Okay, not even budging the needle at all. So let's dial this back to about -15. Let's see what happens here. Okay, that's a bit more like it. Yeah, so we're getting a little bit too much. Particularly, there's one particular note in the solo there, which is attacked very, very hard, and you can hear the compressor really slam down on it. So even with this slowish attack and this medium release, it's pretty grabby. So let's have another listen with this dial back a little bit more. So at the most there, we're heading for around about 3-4 maybe dB, especially on that really attacked note that the sax player goes for. So yeah, it's fairly grabby, but the needle is barely moving, except for those couple of heavy hitting notes on the fat channel. So let's now bypass this guy, and let's go in and dial almost exactly the same settings here. And we'll see what this one does. This is the channel strip collection RC500, which is a FET style channel strip. So the compressor behaves, I suppose, a little bit like an 1176. But anyway, let's check this out. So again, not really doing a whole lot apart from those louder notes. So let's increase the threshold back a little bit further. All right, so these are pretty much identical in their sound, and pretty much identical in what they actually do, because they essentially use the same code primarily. It's maybe, I would suggest that the code maybe for the Fat Channel XT is maybe a little bit stripped back by comparison to the full channel strip that you get over here. So yeah, so that would be a good comparison of these guys. And you do get this high pass filter for your compressor as well, which you do not get on the RC500 channel strip. So there are some clear differences here. You get makeup gain and a high pass filter, which you don't get over here. So there are some definite differences between the two compressors in terms of just kind of like additional functionality. All right, so let's go and take a look at maybe the VT1 compressor, and we'll get rid of this guy. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to pin it, and we're going to get rid of the RC500, and we're going to move this guy back over here again, and we will find the VT1, and we will get that in underneath there. Much bigger GUI this time. And this compressor is a little bit more variable. You've got more ratio options, and you've got threshold, and you've got, let's see, do we have a gain knob here? No, we don't. Well, we kind of do. We have a gain knob down the bottom here. So yeah, so it is almost identical. And again, you get the key filter, the high pass filter, for the compressor component here as well. So again, let's try and dial in something fairly similar. So this is set to 3 to 1. So let's set this one to 3 to 1. And the threshold, we'll set this to -10 because that's what this one is set at. We'll go for a medium attack. And we'll go for a faster release. And we'll leave the gain down at 0 for now. All right, let's check this out. We will go for the fat channel version first, I think. So we'll bypass the VT1. And we'll listen to the same piece of audio. So we're keeping this a fairly similar test. And you should be able to hear the difference. And Andy Arthur makes the point that you don't get the preamps. That's absolutely correct. Neither in the VT1 or the RC500, in either components, I don't think, even in the EQ, if we go to the EQ and we pull up the VT1 EQ, again, look, see, no preamp. So there's a complete lack of preamps on the fat channel components compared to the channel strips. And of course, you've also got this impedance setting as well, which is extremely cool, by the way. If you don't own this this unit, this is very, very cool. These impedance settings, you do get some very different characteristics and very different flavors come out of each one of these settings. And you can explore, what you might apply these different impedances to for different audio sources. Very well worth going and looking at. So let's go back to the VT1 compressor. And we will take a listen to our audio, to our little soprano sax guy. And we'll see if we can get this doing some compression. Yeah, needle's not even budging. Let's pull that back to about 15, and we'll do the same over here as well. We'll come back to that one later. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Wow, needle's not moving at all. Hardly. Okay, let's dial this back to 20. Alrighty, so we've had a little chance there to have a listen to the VT1. I would say between the two, the VT1 and the RC500, personally for me, I think the VT1 fat channel add-on sounds better on the soprano sax than the RC500. But certainly post your opinions in the chat. That would be very cool. Yeah, Rich is just basically saying that the Chicago area where Jonny is, which is where my sister is as well, actually, we're hit with some pretty spectacular thunderstorms. And some regions, including Jonny's, experienced a power outage. And then, of course, Jonny gets his Windows 10 update. And Rich says here, all the best to JG getting back online. Thanks, Jonny Lipsham, for covering. Yeah, no problem, folks. Very happy to help out. We've got nearly 20 people here. So what do you think, guys, between the RC500 compressor and the VT1, just on this soprano sax? I mean, we can check out some other audio sources, but what do you guys think? Andy's making the point here that he's making the point here that I have noticed you have to really crank the threshold. Yeah, yeah, you definitely do. You do have to crank the threshold. I don't know why you have to crank the threshold back so far before you get some compression happening, even like 2 or 3 dB. You really need to turn this right back. I don't know why that is the case. It may well just be this particular style of compressor. I don't know. I don't know. Somebody says here, I've noticed. Oh, it's Andy who says, I've noticed. Oh, it's just Bob who says, why is the needle moving on the larger one if bypassed? It's a good question. Why is the needle? Let's take a look. That's a good point there, actually. I turned it off in the end. Yeah, when it's bypassed, audio it still appeared to be doing something, which is interesting. Don't know why that was. Chris says VT1 hands down. Andy Arthur says VT1 sounds better. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The VT1 is modeled after the PreSonus ADL 700 channel strip. So the EQ and compressor from the VT1, the individual components that you get here, and the big channel strip here are modeled after the ADL 700, which is now and has been for I think maybe a year or so, a discontinued product. So you can't actually get this anymore. You can't actually purchase the actual hardware channel strip, but it's a tube channel strip. And definitely, I would agree that tube on a soprano sax is maybe better than FET. I would agree with that. You get maybe a bit smoother compression. But I don't think I would want to use the VT1 on an acoustic guitar because I think it's a little bit too grabby. It's a bit more aggressive than the RC500 would be for acoustic guitar. However, I have used this guy on a vocal, and it does sound really good, especially when you start fiddling about with these impedances, which, of course, you don't get on the VT1 compressor over here because that's part of the input stage. And I don't think you even get it on the EQ. No, you don't. You don't. So the EQs and the compressors for the free ones, the VT1 and the RC500, are very stripped back. You get the bare basics of what you need, which is, in the case of the EQ, you just get the 4 gain knobs and the 4 frequency knobs, and that is all you get. And you get high frequency peak and a low frequency peak. That's all you get, guys. So these are stripped back compared to these guys, which might explain why these are free and this is a paid for unit. Okay, certainly goes some way to maybe explain that a little bit. So you get a few more options. And you get the convenience of being able to run the compressor into an EQ or the EQ into the compressor, and you get the impedance, and you get the separate high-pass filter, and you get the trim knob, which you don't get on the smaller units. You get the trim knob on the channel strip collection channel strips, but you don't get them on the separate components. So there are some considerable differences between the two, between the actual unit and the fat channel add-ons. And I rather suspect that some of that is to do with saving space on the DSP for the Series 3 consoles, which is what primarily these guys are designed for. So, for those of you saying, hey, hang on a minute, I actually purchased the channel strip collection, and now here they are, made freely available in the fat channel. Well, it's kind of because they're serving a different purpose. The VT1 and the RC500 EQ and compressor models that you now get in the Fat Channel XT and also primarily on the DSP of your Series 3 mixer, they serve a slightly different purpose. The primary reason for these add-ons is for the consoles, for the Series 3 mixers. But in order to make the Series 3 mixers work well with the integration between the console and Studio One, it's important that you have a fat channel counterpart, which is what we have here. So, these guys are identical to what you get on the Series 3 mixer, and that's really important. So they're kind of stripped back so that they can fit onto the DSP. And so, that's your reason for that. Now, as to all the other models that you get, for example, you get this one, the Comp 160, which is so blatantly obvious, the DBX 160, but obviously they can't call it that because they'd get sued, so they don't. But even down to just a cursory glance, it is clearly a DBX 160, but that's okay. But these ones here, these are $80 per unit. Now, here's the thing. There are people out there who would be saying, well, that's expensive for an add-on, isn't it? Rather expensive for an add-on? Well, here's the thing. These are primarily designed for the mixer, for the Series 3 console. And so you have the counterpart in the Fat Channel XT, so that, when let's say you record your live session through your mixer using the onboard DSP, and then you want to bring it into Studio One via capture, well, you need the Fat Channel XT counterparts. So that's why they're there. But mixer plugins, like for example the ones that Waves do for consoles, they are at least 3 or 4 times the price of something like this here. This is $80. You're talking about $500-600 more dollars on top. Plus, there are other companies that make analog modeled plugins for mixers, and they can be as much as $5,000. So $80 really is actually at the low end of the DSP plugin market for a mixer. I'm just going to see what what's in the chat. Bobby Booth asks, how close is the RC500 compared to the hardware? It's actually pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. I don't have the hardware unit, but I know people that do, and they have, they have very carefully tested the plugin models. These guys, the channel strips, against the actual hardware units, and they're virtually indistinguishable. Certainly the VT1, which is based after the ADL 700, as I said, a very close friend of mine has a whole bunch of ADL 700s. He also has the ADL 600 as well in his rack, and he compared these plugins, and he said, you know what, if I was to do a blind test, I could not tell these apart. So the state space modeling is fantastic at getting to the very, very detailed elements of what makes these units work. This DBX 160 is fantastic. Just actually yesterday I was experimenting with these on drums, just because I wanted to really crank it on some drums and get some really gritty drums. I mean, obviously in this song it wouldn't work. It would sound awful. But, in a more driving rock song than a kind of, a lightly jazz influenced Chicago shuffle like this song is, it wouldn't be appropriate here, but certainly on something that's got a bit more of a backbeat, the DBX 160, you can really slam the drums and get a fantastic tone out of them. And you would do that with the hardware DBX 160 as well. Let's see. William Everett is here. Good to see you, William. He said, would this work as well on synths? It might. It might. I mean, these, as I say, these are fairly grabby compressors. So you might find that these work pretty well on synths. It depends upon what you're doing. For pads, maybe not. You maybe want something a bit smoother. But if you're talking, really spiky kind of dance, percussive pad sounds, then yes, something that's a little bit more aggressive and grabby might well be right up your street. And I would think that these might well work, but I think you would have to experiment personally. Let's see. Chris says to William, no compression needed if you're using a square wave because they're already compressed. Excuse me. Wow. Oh, boy. Excuse me. Sorry, folks. I can't mute my mic because I don't have a mute button. Sorry about that. I do apologize. I've just blown some brain cells across the room. Okay. I'm just hoping that this does not descend into a sneezing fit. If it does, folks, I will find a way to mute the sound. Rich Wrestler says, not all things free are great, and the developers know that, but at least some allow trial versions. I just downloaded the trial for the Quadravox. I've heard a lot of good things about the Quadravox. But yes, there are some that provide demos. Not every plugin manufacturer provides demos. Waves definitely do. And I believe Slate does. Stephen Slate, I believe he does. But there are some that just don't. And, they charge you a lot of money for them. Which is where, to be honest, you need to do you need to, if there are no actual demos that you can actually install for yourself and run for yourself, this is where you probably need to look at some reviews. You need to watch some videos where they might be demoed or something like that to at least give you an idea of what you're getting. Yeah, thank you, William. He says salute. Yeah, and to you too. Did I get any on me? No, I didn't. My Union flag did, I think, though. Buffering here. And yes, you refreshed. It may well be a little bit. And that's because I have low bandwidth, Bobby. So, it might be a combination of your internet and mine. There's not a lot I can do about that. If it's intolerable for you, back out, close down YouTube, and make your way back in. Sneezing is what long sleeves are for. Andy says, I have a real DVX 160. It would be worth hooking there. I can't speak today. Andy says, I have a real DVX 160. Would it be worth hooking it up in my studio? Yes. If you have a unit and it works well and it's in good condition, definitely get it into your rig. Especially if you're one of those guys that's going to be dealing with a lot of live drums and you want to mix through a piece of hardware, get it in there. Absolutely. And you may find that you might be able to use Pipeline to make it work for you. All right, so I hope that helps. And Chris is blessing me, and Just Bobby's doing the same, and so is Rick. Thank you, guys. I am so very blessed. Thank you, Woodbeast. And no, I didn't get any on me, I don't think. At least I can't see any. But yeah, brain cells did go flying, folks. Okay, so we've looked at the compressors, and we've not really talked about the EQs. I wasn't really sure whether you guys wanted to look at the EQs at all. But the compressors are very cool. This guy here, this is clearly a Fairchild. But it also reminds me a little bit of the Klanghelm MJU, and I'll tell you why it does that. Let me remove the VT1. Let me show you why I think it does. If I go and find my Klanghelm, where are you? There you are. Get you in instead. There we go. Have a look at at the design of these buttons here. These knobs, particularly this time constant and this timing knob here. Very, very similar. So I wonder if Tony over at Klanghelm has modeled this after maybe a Fairchild, this Mark 1. The Mark 2 is modeled after something very different, and the Mark 3 is modeled after something very different, again, quite modern. I really like this unit. if you've seen my review video of this, I really got into it, and I think I just lost track of time, and it ended up being 45 minutes long. But it's 45 minutes long of me having just a tremendous amount of fun with these, particularly on drums, and just absolutely loving what these compressors do to drums. Whether you have them, whether you have them in series with another compressor or whether you have them in parallel, these make fantastic parallel compressors. Because you can absolutely crank the donkeys out of them and get something absolutely awesome. I have used these a fair bit actually in parallel. So yeah, so that to me it was just like when I saw this for the first time, I thought, oh yes, it's definitely a Fairchild compressor, but it did just kind of remind me of this guy as well. And I'm sure it's just purely aesthetic that it reminded me of it, but it certainly did. So there you go. That's the MJUC. Very, very cool compressor and very cheap. It's still only 24 euros, which must be about $20, I think. Extremely worth getting your hands on. William Everett is saying, sure, let's have a look at the EQs. Yeah, would be a on you. You were joking, buddy. Okay. All right, let's have a look at some EQs. So the VT1, it's so simple. In fact, the VT1 and the RC500 EQ, they're really, really simple. The RC500 is a 3-band EQ, 20 to 400, 400 to 5K, and then there's a little bit of crossover here because this one starts at 2K to 20. So this one finishes at 5, but then you've got this one. So ostensibly you could, if you really wanted to, I'm not suggesting you do, but you could say you set this one up at 4K and you set this one for a cut. And then you set this one at the same for a boost. You could get something pretty cool going on. Kind of like you can on a Neve or a Pultec or something like that. Worth thinking about. Let's return these back to normal. Oh, that just, when you hit this one, it defaults to 16. Interesting. So this one is just a 3-band EQ. You get the option to shelve or peak at the low and the highs. And that is all you get. You don't get any makeup gain. So you might want to follow this up with the mix tool. Just a word of advice if you can use this guy. And the VT1 is a 4-band EQ. You get high frequency peak or high or low frequency peak. And it otherwise defaults as shelves at the top and the bottom. 20 to 250, 160, again, a little bit of crossover here, to 2K, 800 to 8K, 2K to 20. So there's crossover on at least 3 of these bands, which you could take advantage of. And they're pretty good. As I say, they're pretty broad because, you know, they're not parametric. There's no way in which you can adjust the Q on these. So they're fairly broad. So use these kind of like for relatively broad brushed EQ moves is what I would suggest for either the RC500 or the VT1. Now, the ones you can buy, Bobby Booth says IK Media Multimedia has a Fairchild emulation plugin as well. Yes, they do. William Everett says no graphics, no waveforms, waterfall. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, William. But yes, there are no graphics on these guys, because the actual channel strips that these are modeled after don't have them either. So you have to EQ with your ears, which is what you'd have to do on a console. If you are doing any mixing on an SSL or a Neve or a CAD or any other console like that, or even the TG12345, there are no graphs, guys. No waterfall diagrams, nothing like that. You have to use your ears. Maybe on a bus. Lorenz is here. Good to see you, Lorenz. Thanks for coming. So we've got 18 people here, and we're just having a cursory glance here, guys, at what you get with the Fat Channel XT. You also get a nice vintage. This is very, very cool. I like this. 3-band EQ, fairly straightforward. Shelf, peak in the middle, and a filter. As I say, I haven't really explored very much these as yet. Didn't really get time. But I am beginning to explore them and check out what they're like and what they do. And then you got this. I think this Baxen dial is, I think it's the Dangerous Music EQ. I forget the name of it at the moment, but yeah, so you get shelf at the top and the bottom, and you get these guys in the middle. Pretty much, that's all you get, really. And I have never even seen the actual Dangerous Music EQ, so I have no frame of reference about this at all. This is an EQ that I know pretty much nothing about. So I am exploring this for the very first time and trying it out for the very first time, just like a lot of you guys are. What's this Bobby is talking about? Okay, Bobby Booth is off. Okay, Bobby, take care, mate. See you soon. And Whoopi says that I'm doing Presonus plugins, but yeah, they have one. Yes, they do. I'm a little confused, Bobby, actually, while you're saying I know bye-bye. I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay, so yeah, these ones, as I say, they're all $80 per unit. And you get the VT one and you get the RC500 for free because they are Presonus units. Are these worth getting? Is it worth having these different components, even if you have the channel strips already? I would say yes, especially if you have the Series 3 mixer. If you don't have the Series 3 mixer, I would suggest that perhaps these might be a little bit on the redundant side for you. You may never really use them that much, unless, let's say, you want to combine a Fairchild compressor with the VT, with the RC500 EQ. You could do that. And that's maybe the only advantage I can think of. I can't really think of necessarily any other reason, if you already have the channel strips, where these would be useful. Being able to mix them up with other EQs and other compressors, I think, yes, that's probably the best advantage that you get from having these in the Fat Channel. And I would suggest, I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit, and I could be wrong. Oh, and Bobby's got company. Okay, mate, that's fine, mate. Go and enjoy. I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit. And I know that they've called this the Fat Channel Collection Volume 1. I suggest that there's probably, I would suggest it's highly likely that at some stage there's going to be a Volume 2 that's going to include some other options. Don't know what they might be. There might be, I don't know, maybe there might be a bus compressor. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? A bus compressor like the SSL, or maybe some actual SSL EQ and compressor models. That'd be great. To have the SSL in the Fat Channel. That'd be very cool. So I don't know, maybe something like that's going to come. That'd be cool. Okay, so I hope that you guys have found this useful and helpful. We are coming towards the end of the show, I have to tell you. So I think we're going to finish up with just some questions, to be honest. Because given the bandwidth that I have at this point in time, I can't really fully demonstrate what these things are capable of, because it's going to sound garbled with my narrow broadband that I have at the moment. I know that doesn't make sense, narrow and broadband. Doesn't really make sense. But hopefully, as I say, when I move July 2nd, hopefully I will have much faster broadband, much better upload speed, and I should hopefully be able to use something like OBS to do my streams, and I should be able to demonstrate things in much higher fidelity, audio-wise and picture-wise. So that's kind of where I'm hoping that things will go from July. But in the meantime, this is the best I can do. So kind of like doing plugin demos and doing something in Studio One, it's not so easy. It just chews up my bandwidth, particularly with the camera, because the camera uses up an awful lot of the bandwidth. And it's, for some reason, YouTube seems to think that my camera is more important than my screen sharing. So screen sharing gets very little bandwidth and the camera gets all of it. So that's kind of how it works. So we've got about 10 minutes to go. So why don't we just chew the fat and have some questions on either these plugins that we talked about, or we could talk about songwriting, or something else. Harmony, melody, rhythm, whatever. We can talk about that for the last 10 minutes or so. Let's see. Chris says, Just Bob says, if you only have an audio box USB, which free plugins would be suited for that? There is the that plugin bundle that comes from PreSonus, which I think is called the Studio Magic Bundle. I think it's called. That's what I want. I think that's what it's called. It's called the Studio Magic Bundle, and they come with your device. So Whoopies, I'll get to that in just a minute. Yeah, so they come with your device, and they give you some analog style EQs and compressor options that you can try. Some of them are kind of a bit demo-y, but they're worth having a try out. And then if you actually like the real unit, you can go and purchase that externally. But yeah, if you have an audio box USB, the best free plugins really are what you get in Studio One natively, and also kind of the free options that you get with the the Studio Magic Bundle, I would suggest. Chris says, on all of them, I notice a limiter is available. In what instance would you need a limiter? Isn't 20:1 and above essentially be a limiter anyways? Yes, but the limiter is part of the Fat Channel plugin chain. So you will notice on the Fat Channel plugin, if I go back to sharing my screen again, hang on just a sec. Oh, lost the option to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so if I go back to Studio One for a second, yes, there is a limiter at the end of the chain. You're quite correct. But there is also a high pass filter at the start of the chain. See that? If I set this guy back to my Fairchild, there we go. So you have a high pass filter and gate. So if I turn the gate on, that's what you get. Okay. There is no special kind of fancy GUI for the gate. This is as good as it gets. So kind of like the order of events really is high pass filter. And then you can reverse this. You can have EQ into compression, which is actually what I generally prefer. So I would prefer kind of high pass filter into a gate if I actually need it. Most of the time I don't. Into EQ, into compressor. And then, I've got this option to have the limiter. If the only circumstances in which I would maybe use all of the elements of the Fat Channel would be if I'm doing something like a voiceover, or I'm doing something for broadcast audio, like I'm doing a radio drama, maybe. I've done a few of those where I've worked with other actors, and I've been in my studio reading my side of the script, and they've been in their own studio doing theirs, and we've all combined on like a radio station, kind of like Jonny and I do for Songwriting Simplified. We do it through Skype. Well, this radio play that I have been working on, we use a completely different piece of software, which I can't really talk about because you know, I'm not affiliated with the company that make it. So and so we use this particular software, and it means that all of us can get our audio in to the same place, and it's dead easy to edit it in any DAW. And sometimes I do it, and sometimes one of the other guys do it. And the only time I actually use the whole fat channel chain is with the limiter is if when I'm doing that radio play. And it's really great fun, by the way. You might be quite surprised to learn that I am a bit of an amateur actor. Have been since I was a school kid, really. Been involved in amateur drama societies at college and at university. Really good fun. Really enjoy it. So getting the chance to do like a radio play, it's good fun. And yes, so that's when I would use the I'd have this guy on here set to maybe relatively low, and I get a reasonable amount of limiting because that's what you need for broadcast. So yeah, so there you go. I'm going to go back to standard screen now and grab a few more of your questions. Oh, how on earth did I manage to do that? I don't know. All right, so let's have a look. Whoopi says, great to see you. Thank you very much, mate. Bobby says, oh, before I go, you can get these as a bundle at Sweetwater. Yes, you can. You can get them as a bundle from personas.com, the Persona shops, shop.personas.com. All those Ozone 8 here. Yeah, awesome. Ozone, yep. Whoopi is saying, is telling me to calm down. I do great. Well, thank you. William Everett is appreciating me. Thank you. Appreciate it. Whoopi asks, were you invited to the royal wedding? No, I was not. I know. Tragedy, isn't it? I mean, surely that's the constitutional crisis, you know? Jonny Lipsham does not get invited to the royal wedding, even though, you know, he has a secret espionage life, which I can't talk about. You would have thought I would have been top of the list as a VIP guest of the royal family, but no. The new fat channel release is what I meant. Oh, right. Okay. Thanks, Just Bob. Whoopi says it'd be cool to have a template already packed with the proper plugins. Yes, and you can do that. You can create your own chains and you can save them. That's dead easy to do. Do I do the naked scenes as an actor? A bit hard to do nudity on radio, Woodbeast. And for audiobooks, it's pretty hard to do nudity as well. So no, I don't. Sorry, mate. Interesting question, though. And Chris rescues the conversation by saying, hit the like button. Absolutely. We had nearly 20 people in here, so it'd have been nice to have approximately 20 likes, but you know, we've got 9 at the moment. That's about half of the people. That's cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to my YouTube channel at the very last minute. I know a lot of Jonny's audience would have just taken the opportunity to have the night off, and that's fine. That's all cool. And hopefully Jonny will be up and running again tomorrow night. If not, he and I will make some kind of announcement, and I will probably be doing Songwriting Simplified on my own. But if not, and if all is well, it'll be as normal over on Johnny's channel at the usual time. So yeah, I'm sure Jonny will post something in the support group at some point, hopefully. And if not, I'll take care of something. All right, folks, thanks for coming, and I'm going to wish you all a very good night. Good night.